Hey yo, what's up everyone? It's your boy Freeze with the weekly live stream. And today, well, we're going to talk about a couple of things. Obviously, the big news that's on everybody's mind right now is the series of nerfs. So we're going to talk about that uh, primarily just because, particularly the combiner nerfs. I know there's a lot of concern. We'll try to talk about some ways to navigate that. Um, like we did the week before last. Um, Want to talk about the fence that's going to eventually come to Transformers Earth Wars. It's a new building that is on the way. So we'll talk about that. I'm kind of thinking it's probably going to be a HQ19 thing, but I know some other testers in here. Correct me if I'm wrong. But so we'll talk about that a little bit. I want to talk a little tiny bit about events too, because along with this combiner stuff, um, there comes a lot of talk about how to manage some of the different game modes, how to manage mayhem mode, how to manage um, elimination mode, stuff like that. So we'll get into that conversation a bit, and we'll talk a little bit about what to expect the day in play test because we got the names for the 5-star batch. Some of y'all probably already saw it because I know Waza was talking about it a little bit. But we'll talk about it. I'll give my thoughts. I'll get your thoughts too because we need some ideas to make some of this stuff better. And yeah, so all in all, should make for a pretty good stream. Before we get into any of that, let's go take a look at this week's newsletter. All right, so this week we have the event. It is called When Realms Collide. It is week 7 of the saga, and they start off talking about they're still working on some fixes from obviously we had that large patch. I think it's 2 weeks ago now. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, for those of you who already looked at the newsletter, that list is very, very long. I already see a lot of comments about it in the chat, which we'll get to shortly. But it's an individual event. They actually make an individual mayhem event. And realistically speaking, I'm going to scroll down the chart real quick. Realistically speaking, it's done at 50K. They're giving you all that extra room, extra 150K to grind XP. So I always like that. I always say for the people who like to spend heavily on the game, allow them that opportunity. Like, for me, keep it a band with you. I might not do much of the event at all. I'm going to a concert on Saturday. So, I may or may not hit the individual event. Not really pressed about it, but um, you know, decent 50K prizes. You get two guaranteed 4-star bot crystals. If you got all the bots, then you'll get your 500 of your 5-star shards. So, pretty cool there. 750K spark and combiner spark, as well as 12 of the 500K troop XP items, 1.5K 5-star shards, so that's good. Um, 3K 4-star shards, 5K 3-star shards, and 50K premium shards. So that's your event chart, like we kind of glanced at earlier. All in all, I was trying to make it kind of relaxing before we go into week 8. So totally get that. Like I've been saying, man, um, they have been getting better at the event planning overall. I mean, obviously there's still going to be it's things that I dislike, like as far as like say a week 6 Titan event. I still want my 12-week saga, and it probably won't come, but I think that's the best way to go forward with all this. I mean, there's a lot of changes. It's a lot of content being pumped out right now, and so that for me, it's one of those things where I was like, hey, if you're gonna try to pump out more stuff, as far as in the game, you gotta go and you gotta go and make a better schedule. So you got your typical battle zones, add into that mayhem mode, and the thing that I like about the timing of this random mayhem mode event, right? So one thing I was saying last week for week 6 for the Titan event was that Well, obviously, I wasn't on last week. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the week before that, I was saying that with the week 6 event, with it being mayhem mode, this is kind of your opportunity to have an adjustment period for how you're how you're dealing with your combiner stuff. You know, a lot of people are just like myself included, was just using God Neptune, dominating, um, dominating the events, just using God Neptune, and now that you're probably not going to be able to do that, um, this is your chance to get the practice to see what it is that you are going to do. So definitely hit the event if you're unsure going into week 8. All right, so today Tracks and Cutthroat dropped as the 5-star in the web store. Um, and they're saying they'll come to the game next year if you're not going to purchase them, and eventually to a 5-star batch. Um, this one is, for me, it's good and bad. I think it's good when you can go put content where people can just buy it and not have to work for it, and in particular, it helps you if, say, they do an event or something and you earn the content. But I don't like this web store stuff, and I'm actually going to come back to that. So I don't want to beat that dead horse yet because that's going to be one of the first things I talk about. Um, so we'll come back to that. 4-star crystals. So we're not putting non-dupe 4-star crystal in the event, but 2. Play this weekend to recruit 2 more bots to your squad. If you have them all already, then each one will reward 500. So we already talked about that. 500 5-star shards. And then next weekend, so this one kind of came out of thin air for me. I mean, granted, they have been saying there was going to be a surprise. They've been saying that all saga, but Trailbreaker and Exhaust are going to be the next legacy bots to become a 5-star. They're replacing next week's endurance event, and you know, with that comes the question of who's going to be the next 5-star combiner. I'm going to talk about that a little bit too, because I got some pretty strong feelings about not necessarily who's it going to be, but more along with the timelines and stuff like that. So I'm gonna come back to that as well. Um, they are saying it's not going to be Skyrain and Galvatronus, but there will be many more bots available to unlock further 5-star combiners. But we have no preference on which 5-star combiner comes first, even if all the 5-star bots are unlocked. So keep that in mind. And one of their last talking point is the same talking point that I'm on, and it's we just got 5-star Computron and Lyle Kaiser, man. It's only a certain amount of combiners in the game. If you go use them all up, then we're just gonna be sitting in Discord crying and complaining that hey, we need more combiners. So I mean, space it out. They've been putting out more combiners lately than I've ever seen in the game. You know, we started off earlier in the year with the Dino King and Raid, and even though they said 4-star, and we had started working 5-star at first for them, and then that's when we start saying, hey, Lyle Kaiser and Computron are coming and stuff like that. So, with all things said, give it some time. All right, there's a laundry list of bug fixes. Yeah, say fix flat plus DPS not stacking. I know, I know that Big Blade was the first person to tell me about Sandstorm. His range had got shorter after the patch. They fixed that. Beachcomber didn't have the numbers showing for the reflection. Uh, they fixed Perceptor's hack and nose cone and drill horns range. Um, hey, I see Grim got a basic membership. Thanks for that, bro. Really, really appreciate it. I gotta start making some more stuff out here later. All right, bots in the air were being targeted by Spider-Mans. I actually missed that one, so I'm glad they fixed that. Strafe and Thrust had some focusing problems. They fixed that. Blur and Runabout being knocked back while using their ability. So they're not even supposed to be touched while they're using their ability. So they fixed that. Since his twins were humping walls, Computron and Lyle Kaiser. So that was a weird one. When they went in stealth, they disabled the team. So that's been fixed. They made some optimizations to the attack turret for Huffer and Lockdown. Hot Rod is getting disabled when casting his abilities, so they fixed that. Let's see. Ooh, this list long. So supposedly the Optimus and Megatron charge got jacked up. And I was having this conversation yesterday with a couple of players on my Discord because they were saying it was doing they said it was doing terrible, and I was like, well, it looked really good when we were on playtest, so I think something might have happened where old build got through somehow, but supposedly that's fixed. SG Jetfire, Thundercracker, drones still in DPS. Bro, actually, this list is really, really long, so I'm gonna talk about some of this stuff later on. They did fix my boy Nova Prime and Vector Prime, so he wasn't popping outposts because they had gave him 3 seconds of not being targeted, and it was causing the outpost not to pop. And the thing was, I mentioned it on the first day that the patch came out, and I was told that it was intended. This is why with like bug fixes, and don't get me wrong, this is not me, you know, shitting on the team or anything like that. Um, I think when you give responses to stuff, I'll take a look. For me, that's appropriate. I'm a patient guy. So if you just tell me, hey, we'll take a look at it, and I was like, yeah, he's not popping out post, bro. Like, I pulled him from my team for an entire week because he wasn't popping out post. So they fixed it. It looks good. Glad to see that. Yeah, they got a lot of stuff. They were debating earlier in the week whether or not Red Alert and Run 'em Up could do buildings on defense as far as shielding them. So they fixed that. I'm trying to skip around some of the big ones. And they actually added that to their tooltip as well. That's a big one. The anti-acid, anti-electric, and anti-fire cores and anti-cryo are 95% instead of 100% blocking damage. The thought process is like if you invested in combats or anything like that that use any of those elements, it should be able to do some damage. It won't be a lot, but something. Wow, Defensor and Abominus were only reflecting 10%, so that's been fixed. Combiner's able to see stealth targets. I definitely saw that because I kept trying to use Leo Kaiser, excuse me. I kept trying to use him. So that Cosmos and Peacemaker, Cosmos, Mind White, Peacemaker, and Tip Top were hacking transform targets. Yeah, I was wondering because it was times that I kept getting hacked and I wasn't sure why because it's one of the strategies that I use to keep from getting hacked. And I guess that was happening. So here's a big one, and this is where a lot of the controversy has been today. Ruination and God Neptune's Hollows will no longer cast their abilities. They said this was far too strong, and I already know. We'll talk about that one in a minute because I know a lot of people are highly pissed about that, and we already saw it in the chat that people were pretty angry about that. And they admit, hey, it's another nerf to Ruination and God Neptune. So they want to allocate a way to put power back into him to make up for the fact that the 5-star holograms are gone. So think about that in the chat. If you want to talk about something, start coming up with some ideas. For those of you who are already in the Unicron chat, you probably saw that Dale was asking for ideas for that. I gave my input. It was really, really short, really small, but and then they also changed the damage on Lyle Kaiser and Computron. So, all right, web store bundles this week. You got your general stuff, fuel cells, get your event stuff like that. You got 5-star tracks and cutthroat, which we'll talk about, and they got shadow tracks and shadow cutthroat skins. So those are going to be in the store. G2 First Aid and G2 Scavenger skins are going to be available again for a limited time. So it says you get their skin and all you need to have them battle ready. So that includes 4-star bots, G1 cores, and character shards to rank them up. I breezed past this the first time. They do get a 20% off, or they say you got better deals with the loyalty points and the occasional free stuff. But somewhere in there, I thought it was in the newsletter, but somebody gave me a code for it, and I gotta find that code because it was I think it was 10% off. So looking at the soccer schedule, obviously this way we got a 50K with a 200K cap, which is cool because I will be out of town again this weekend. Um, Next week, so it's actually going to be a legacy event. See, when I first heard about them adding Exhaust and Trailbreaker, I was actually pretty pissed because I was just like, and don't get me wrong, I love the bot. I alternate the bot in and out for war. So I definitely wasn't upset about the bot. I just thought that we were going to go and do an endurance event because at that point they still said endurance. And I thought we were going to start doing that for legacy bots, which that was going to make an ugly precedent. Not going to lie to you, that would have just raised the scores on legacy event. The problem that I have with that is that, we first started working on Cyclonus and Powerglide 11 months ago, and we worked on them while we were working on the balance patch, probably a little bit before the balance patch. And so the first question I get, as soon as they started talking about Trailbreaker and Exhaust being in the week 8 event, first thing people ask me, hey, what happened to Powerglide? Bro, I don't know. Like, a lot of this stuff I find out in real time with y'all. Like, I saw the announcement, and I was like, oh, that's gonna go over well. But um, long story short, we'll see. I am happy to see Exhaust and Trailbreaker get their 5-star. I kind of got a theory. I mean, obviously HQ 19 is coming, right? So now this week, or over the next week, if you count next week's event, you're gonna have 2 bots that you can use as 5-stars to protect your entire team. So I think that's important, but we'll talk about it a little bit later. As far as your content creators, make sure you check out all of your official ones. Myself, Soldier, Suntree Kawaza, CF, and then Val. And make sure you check out your unofficial ones too. A couple of y'all in the chat already. Feel free to post your links as you see fit. And also for you guys, most of y'all are in my Discord too. Post your links in there too, man. Like because um, people look at that stuff. So if you don't know what section to post it in, hit me up on Discord. I'll let you know. All right, still on the same thing about team streams. Don't know when they're gonna do another one. But yeah, that is the news for this week. So let's go check out the chat. Lots and lots of chat, bro. It's been lots of chat going on since this patch. I'm not gonna hold you. It just has been because everybody's got opinions about it, and I understand. When I look in there and I see 230 thumbs down every time, every time the team talks, I feel kind of bad for them. But I do understand why people who invested heavily, spent time and events and stuff on this stuff, will be upset. So I see the homie Big Blade 297, one of my moderators, join again, says, yeah, been a while since he was last on stream. Yeah, says good to see you, Brody. I said, I know you've been like in and out of retirement with the game, so yeah, I get it. But thanks for joining. We got Twilight Tier, one of my good friends and members and fellow content creator. Check his channel out, guys, in there as well. Thanks for joining. We got Lou Mega with us again, and I know he didn't get to stick around that too long, but he can catch me on the replay. I appreciate that. Thanks for joining. We got Volcanicus 69 with us again. Thanks for joining, homie. And he says, still don't understand why they nerf Ruination more. Definitely the talking point of the day, so we'll talk about that. We got the good homie Chris Harmon, one of my good friends, moderators, one of my first members, jack of all trades. Thanks for joining, buddy. Volcanica 69 says 4 solo events in a row. and no endurance event this saga. Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I'm not mad at the four solos, um, per se. I mean, people keep asking for them, to be honest with you. Um, but yeah, you're gonna have a lot of them when you typically gonna have solos before larger events, and because they keep sticking, large events in random spots like week 6, you kind of get stuck with that stuff sometimes. So, all right, Chris says, first off, just my opinion, I was never a fan of Cutthroat, but the 5 stars actually really good, better than the 4 star. First, he's a banner piece. Second, he has a speed reduction that's better than 4 star. Okay, yeah, nah, I mean, definitely, it's definitely good. And I was one of the players that I used them a lot over the years. I don't really use them as much now. I still like using him with I was the one that I started that combo, and I saw a lot of people using it for a while. When a lot of people were using Quintus and Singe on him, just because it's hard to try to pair Singe because he does make your bot go forward. So I started using that. So this is the 4 star. I do like to keep it a band with you. We didn't even test the 5 star. It just kind of just got dropped in there. So for me, um, I'm still on the fence about whether or not I'm gonna get it or not. So, and Chris also reminded you guys to like and subscribe if you hadn't already. So yeah, do that. Let's see. Volcanic 69 just tried Ruination in elimination mode, and he's even worse than Optimal Maximus. That I haven't tried yet. I probably need to try that today. I won't be able to do it on the stream because I'm on playtest server, and it's probably still um, the pre-nerf version. But I mean, I might be able to check it out. Who knows? All right, let's see. We get the homie Jacada with us again, fellow. Well, yeah, fellow former playtester, I guess now. But thanks for joining, Brody, one of my good friends and members. We get the homie Tracks with us again, another one of my good friends and members. Uh, yeah, now you caught the stream on time, Brody. Thanks for joining. All right, we got C Black in here with us, and he says they just do shit because it seems. Uh, the motherfuckers spend their. Actually, hold on, I'm reading this wrong. Who spend their turning off and forcing them to quit instead of the new ability 11s and G1s, which we haven't seen an entire batch in damn near a year. So yeah, I mean, to C Black's point, um, I think the last time they did one, actually it's been over a year. I think they did one in August of last year, I believe, for ability 11s. I have to go look through my thumbnails, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of people upset. I'm gonna keep talking about ways to navigate this stuff because at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that they did change it is manageable, but it's just the fact that you invested so much in it, and that's the part I always try to avoid. A lot of times when I'm in playtest, my biggest thing is balance. Like, I don't like to come in there and ask for all this stuff just to try to fit my own personal play style and everything. I just want the stuff to be balanced so it doesn't get kicked back down the road. Um, and that's always my primary focus. I hate for somebody to get something and you go get say you get an endurance bot that's awesome, and then they just go take the endurance bot away. I don't like that. Or not take him away, but make him to where he's not war viable. So I definitely get your concern. We got the homie Grim Studios with us again. Thanks for joining, Grim. We got my teammate Skinny33 in here, starting to get worried that I wasn't going to do a stream. Yeah, nah. So one of the things that people gonna have to get used to now that because I was always going in there and typing my stuff into the Discord, saying that I was going to stream, and sometimes I forget. And so now that the system does it automatically, it won't do it until I actually go hit the button to start the stream. So it might come in a little bit later, but it'll be more consistent. So we got the homie DC with us again. Thanks for joining, DC. Let's see. We got the homie Fox the Bomb, one of my good friends, moderators, members, stuff like that. Thanks for joining. We got the homie Blade 19, one of my good friends and members as well. Thanks for joining. Yeah, we got my whole crew that I talk to just about every other day in here. We got Brother Concrete in here with us again. Good friend and member as well. Thanks for joining. We got the homie RG in here. Thanks for joining, RG. Let's see. We got Grim says, let's buff Onslaught's ability. Nah, he does need it. I agree with you there. That'll be dope. Volcanica 69 says, why get a 5-star only for it to be gutted? You know, yikes. You know, but it's a realistic concern. I mean, even when I was watching Waza's stream earlier, one of the things he was talking about, what he wanted to do in regards to cutthroat or tracks on his skin because he's an Autobot. Um, you know, I believe he was leaning more towards not getting it, and we'll talk about all the reasons why here in a bit. But I do think that I might go for it, and I'll tell you my reasons why in a bit. Yeah, more talk about God Neptune. We got Berserk with us again. Thanks for joining, Berserk. He says thanks for keeping things chill, no pun intended. Nah, I mean I'm trying, man. Like it's, but I mean people got a good reason to be upset for a lot of this stuff. So Grim Studios told me to take the hat off. I mean I got a little tiny bit of hair right now. I say I got a bald spot, but I still got a little bit of tiny bit of hair. Blade 19 says I'm not going for any more 5-star combiners. If I get the 5-star, uh, if I get the 5-star box, then I'm not, or bots, then I'm get them not chasing anything in this game. All right, we got Block Boy joint. This says rough 5-star run, getting in yet another nerf. Yeah, Jacada, and I didn't know if you wanted to tell them, but Jacada was like, that was the final nail in the coffin for me. I left the TFEW server and playtest today. You know, when we started looking at the last nerf, the Ruination. Skinny33 said, uh, the code for 20% code is Rogue Zero. I couldn't think of it earlier, so appreciate you for that, Skinny. Yeah, a lot of players on the fence about leaving, including Volcanic at 69. Yeah, it's a lot going on, man. So let's get into it. I said I already been talking like mad long. So let's go over to the battlefield and see what we got going here today. So, first topic that's on everybody's mind. I'm gonna talk about this guy Neptune and Ruination thing. Um, Low key, and it's tough, you know, because what he was doing, these holograms will go into their transform mode. Now, I don't think they updated playtest yet, and that's fine. But they would essentially use their abilities. Now, for me, um, and I'm trying to like word this delicately because I'm not saying that it's a bad thing for them to do that nerf. I understand that they definitely did that, and it's probably going to stay like that. Here's the problem, and I'm actually going to load him up. Well, it's not going to work on whatchamacallit, but I can give an example of what we have been doing. So what most players would do, especially when you get into an event, is you go into the event and you destroy a bunch of stuff. And granted, this is just a regular battle. It's not going to be exactly your mayhem mode, but you do something like this. You might drop a bot for power leveling. You go in there, you run God Neptune, you wipe out the base, and before he dies, I think I was one of the first people to start talking about it. Is it before he dies, you go in and drop the holograms. The holograms clean up, you know, and everything will be good to go at that point. The problem with that is, and this is the issue that I'm having, when you look at God Neptune, now you already started off with the first set of nerfs because you used to have water and all the abilities work together and everything like that. So that first round of nerfs, when they moved him down to when they moved first off they took shielding away from the rush, but usually it'll look something like this, like right before you get ready to die, you go drop those holograms, and now that the holograms are a little bit tankier, but like even in a situation like this, now I'm just sitting up here not doing anything, I'm just kicked back watching the and I'm watching the holograms do their thing. And here they're actually gonna get killed, but they are much stronger. The problem is they did all of this damage, and now they're talking about them not doing their abilities. And a couple of other conversations came up during that particular conversation because I was in there. For once, I was on Discord just chatting about a bunch of stuff today. And one of the things that came up was, well, what if we don't let the God Neptune holograms damage the HQ? Now, I'm not for that in any capacity. I'm not sure if their mind is made up about that. So, um, but they did start asking what ways we can improve God Neptune with his remaining abilities because um, the problem that people are running into is, say you go and do elimination mode. A lot of people are relying on God Neptune for a lot of stuff. He's great in events. You can go use him in elimination mode, and it's awesome, right? Because it's less work. Now, I was having a conversation with some friends a couple of days ago, and the topic came up. Well, actually, it was probably like last week at this point, and the topic came up of the difficulty of the prime zone, and basically, my friends were saying that, hey, it's the prime zone, or even if it's going to be like zone 17, it should be hard. My counter argument to that, and I might be wrong, I might be right, but my counter argument is events, the value of events is from how much you are willing to grind. And so when I see these changes to God Neptune and Ruination, who people are using to go into events, that people are saying, hey, I'll use this and I'm more likely to compete in an event because I can use this guy, I can take him to the top of the screen, and I can go do my thing. Well, they already made him weaker. They made the his second ability not quite as strong. They took away his water, and so they said that wasn't. They took that away from the game. Period. And they made the range on the tidal wave shorter. So now, but they did give him the damage reduction on that part of his ability. So now, with the holograms, if the holograms were unable to damage HQ, knowing that he's probably going to die, I don't see the value in that particular logic because if he, if people have something they feel comfortable using in events and using it at high level, um, then cool. So what if they took this away? What if he couldn't damage the HQ? That would just be rough, man, because I feel like Events, obviously, they make a lot of money in this game off of events, and I'm not trying to stop that in any capacity. My issue is with the event, it's a non-competitive thing. Like if they said we're not going to let you use the holograms in war where it's competitive, cool, man. Like you probably shouldn't have that. But then when you go into like elimination mode, like I was just in, and events, and I'm like, why are we trying to push to make this stuff so much harder when the the I don't want to call it a struggle, but for lack of better words, the part that you're fighting with in events is the sheer volume of battles. Man, listen, frustrated players that are losing a bunch of battles in these events, bro, they're gonna quit and they're probably gonna just stop doing events. In all transparency, now there was a point in time where we used to just go take our teams, and some of us had teams of like 4 to 8 bots that we use for events and everything. And, that was cool for that time. We're well past that point, and we just got to do better when it comes to events. Now, I'm gonna actually go back because I see a lot of chatting in here, and I know people got strong opinions about this, and I don't want to ignore those. So we're gonna go take a look at the chat while we have this discussion. And I see Michael Cooper joined the chat. Thanks for joining, Michael. And he says that they've done it to themselves. Freeze should have listened to the play testers. I was having a conversation about that with some fellow play testers, and somebody actually asked me the question today. It was an interesting question. They said, and I think it was Grim that asked me that earlier in Discord, but he asked me the question of, do they listen to us? And my response, and it was still kind of soft-hearted, because I don't hate the team. I think they do a lot of amazing things. I think that the things that do go wrong are wildly wrong. You know what I mean? And uh, thinking about it in that same spirit, one of the things that he was asking me if did they listen to us, and I said they do. They actually listen to me the majority of the time. However, the times they don't, those are those in the most aggravating times. And I'm not trying to pretend like I know it all, or any play tester or group of play testers knows it all. But when it's a large group of them, almost all of them telling you something, you might want to consider it. If I'm telling you something and I usually like all the content that you produce, you might want to take a listen, because if I'm strongly against something, it's probably a good chance it's coming from a place of logic. I see people quoting Obi-Wan Kenobi saying they have done that to themselves. Yeah, Michael Cooper says they did that to themselves. Well, here's the part. As far as like the event stuff goes, here's the part that I feel like I think it's a shared responsibility. I think some of this we did to ourselves. And hear me out and feel free to disagree. A few months earlier this year, a few months ago, one of the things I was saying, or one of the things that they tried to do, was to come out there with like larger events. And I think they wanted to get their money that way from people who wanted to do so. And so one of the things they were going to do is they're going to start offering general ranks and endurance. And that endurance that they tried to build was like about 5 million points. Now, like I said, hear me out. When they tried to go do that, it upset people a lot. And at that time, I said, let them do it. And it was like, everybody's like, "Oh, it's a cash grab. They're gonna try to." I mean, yeah, they're gonna try to make cash off of it. But what messed me up about it is they tried to do it and announce it like the week of the event. Well, actually, no, they announced it earlier than that. I think when they made the change and made it 4 million. I know one of the events they made it 4 million, and then you get a major rank, and that was like the first time they had done that. And so people who had already bid on like 3.5 were now feeling the pressure to go complete. So I didn't like that. But I think that if we would have went ahead now, I'll probably never see. I know a couple people got some general ranks from just different stuff. I'll probably never see a general rank. You know what I'm saying? Because it's always stuff to go chase. It's one of the reasons why I don't want us to have another 5-star combiner right now. Because if I got to go get the pieces for it, that means I won't be earning my ranks and stuff like that. We just got a 5-star combiner. But I say all of that because one of the things that I'm looking at is if we would have if they would have made that revenue from having those larger events and they put it up there, and then here's the caveat: if they let us know in a timely manner, and then everybody could bid on that stuff, and the people who wanted to do the 5 million could. You know what I'm saying? Now I don't know if we have enough people to be able to split it up into I want to do 5 million, I want to do 4 million, and I want to do 3.5. I don't I suspect that we don't because you usually see around 11 to 12. I think the most I've seen complete an endurance was like maybe like 15, alliances. So I suspect that we don't have enough people in the game to do that, but you know. Anyway, that's my mini rant about that. All right, to people talking about Minnesota, I'm gonna talk about. Let's take a look at some of this stuff with the combiners. Since here's my issue because I know a lot of people were saying, um, especially Decepticon players, a lot of people were saying, ooh, combiner piece. Now, when I look at that, and when I say that, I'm talking about in regards to um, Cutthroat coming out on the Decepticon side. Here's my issue. Now, obviously, I don't have hunger here because I mean I actually don't have them in the game in playtest. I can actually go get them, but then you know they're a center twin, right? So for me, if we're not going to be fully complete, I'm not in a rush to go get the piece just because it's a piece. Like it will come out and it will go into a batch, right? Now, here's my issue. This comes out next year. Next year could be 4 months from now. Well, not 4 months from now. Technically 5 months from now, or it could be this time next year. Who knows? And then you could wait for Cutthroat to come into the batch. Now, my issue with Cutthroat and tracks is that, and I'm gonna go back to the big screen. My issue here is when I look at HQ 19 coming up, and there's some patterns that we got to look at. So the first thing is, a lot of the top players are saying, yeah, the game's easy right now, and the Yodos are saying they're still going to evaluate to see if the game is too easy, right? Well, if that's the case, and I do feel like it's for me personally, I do feel like it's easier for me right now, right? But if HQ 19, typically the pattern is the game gets easier before it gets harder, right? And so now we're looking at a bot and Cutthroat and Tracks who can help protect your team. Now you're looking at a legacy bot that jumped over Power Glide and and Cyclonus because we've been working on him, like I said, for 11 months. I think they're giving us this content for a purpose because Cutthroat, he's got 21 seconds to smoke. He's gonna and you can and it's in a wide area, it can cover your team, and they didn't make any changes to him so far. And that's one of the talking points that Waza was making on his stream. Is like, look, what if they go and change this stuff? It's like, you know, and a few of us, um, well, not us, because I didn't say that shit, but a few people who said that Cutthroat's overpowered. I know Dale. I had a conversation with him, and he was saying that he's overpowered. So you do need to be on the lookout for if they are any changes with it. They got a little bit of data that they're looking at, and not to share everything about it because we're not there yet. But they've been sharing data since we're not sharing data, but looking at data since the um patch, and people who use Cutthroat, they're dominating in that data. Now, there's going to be more to look into in regards to the numbers, but people with Cutthroat and tracks are typically dominating. And one of the big things that Waza was talking about earlier is that that first ability use is 2 points in the last 21 seconds, and it's only 330 up there. I mean, Broski's got a point. So I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up. So we'll see. I know some people saying he'll be gutted soon. All right, let's see. So okay, this one's important because Trax actually tagged me. He says, "Who care if the game is easier though? If the majority is happy and people are still spending money, and the ones complaining, um, it is got spoiled, but they wish they didn't complain now, and that's real. That's real, And I say it on the stream all the time, right? Sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for because sometimes when you get it, it don't look the way that you think it's gonna look. So um, I definitely agree with you. Um, you got to find ways to get more people to engage. The more people you get to engage, the more people are willing to spend. Um, and unfortunately, right now, as a matter of fact, let me pull this up. I want to pull up the web store because while we're still talking about Cutthroat and tracks, um, it actually kind of ticked me off a little bit. Let me see if I can. All right, I gotta go find that. That is my note, so I didn't want that up there. But what I did want, so for you guys, yeah, I actually do take notes, and I'm old, man. I forget stuff. So I was looking at the bundles today, and I was debating about whether or not I'm gonna get this and that. So first off, um, I said I owed you like an explanation for last week because I didn't stream last week. So I actually lost my job last week, and I don't want to get into all the political stuff about it. But long story short, I lost my job last week for because of federal funding. I was like a government contractor. I build training for a living, um, and we lost some contracts over the federal budget cuts, right? So I don't know if I'm going to go get this for that reason, but I really, really want to because it's only $50. But when I started looking at the prices of this stuff, and let's go in real quick. Okay, I actually need to log in, so I'm gonna do that. Not a problem. I should have did that before. I thought I did do that beforehand, but I want to look at what we actually get when you go do this. This has been one of my biggest problems with the web store because with the web store, the issue that you really have is when they mark stuff up. So I'm not gonna buy this right now. Oh, I guess I could have just did it this way. Let's see. So $50, you get the bot, point blank, right? Cool, man. Bot captain rank bundle. So you're gonna add another $50 to that. You'll get the bot. You'll get 500k spark, and then you'll get a captain troop rank upgrade. Now, for me, this is why this is not worth $50, an additional $50, because yeah, you're paying $50 for the bot, not a problem. 500k spark that you get every single week. We do. I mean, and I get it. There's some people at lower levels that were doing stuff with like Alliance HQ and stuff. It's not enough spark for that. But if you don't spark every bot, and if you don't spark the bots as soon as you get them, knowing you're not going to be able to use them, like there's plenty of spark. If you hit your wars, if you hit your events, there's going to be spark. So, 500k spark. Basically, you're valuing it at like $25. Hell nah, right? Captain troop rank upgrade. That's for $10 in your cyber pass. So no, that's not $100 worth of stuff. And it bothers me more because I asked the question, well, everybody in every region is not able to go get into the web store, so they just got to sit around and not get 5-star tracks and Cutthroat? And the answer was like, well, they'll be in game soon. Okay, well, like how are they gonna be in game soon? I think they need to be. And then when I saw that it was gonna be next year, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was a little bit frustrated by that, and I think because there's dollar limits that change on the web store, like you're allowed to put higher cost content on the web store than you are in the Apple and Google Play stores, right? So now you get this dude here, this 150 bucks. So now you get 2 million spark. So you're getting 4 times the spark that you would have got for 100, and then you get a major troop upgrade, and they're saying that's $150 worth of content. I I'm not trying to rain on nobody's parade, guys. But you tweaking if you think that's $150 worth of content. The $50 I was cool with. $50 I was cool with. But I was like, to get a major, and you can get major by just hitting an endurance event. Candyman, thanks for joining, my good homie and Horde family mate and member, says, yeah, that's $75 for him. And so yeah, man. I can't justify that, man. Brody, I cannot justify $150 of content. I mean, like, bro, when I had a job, because a lot of times the money I spend in the game is the money I make from YouTube. So, I made $150 last month. I'm not spending it on that. I spent 50 of it on the bot. And so, Berserk says totally right, Freeze. They need broad-based economics. Sell cheaper to more people. Set targets to more players that are motivated. Yeah, and you know what? And we were going in that direction. I feel like when we first got endurance, but now it's like it feels like they want to slow down the damage. Because let's be honest, I don't think anybody's been sitting in like a because they base most of the war stats, most of the when they're making stats for stuff, they base most of it off Prime League. So let's start there. I don't think most people in Prime League War was like, man, that Ruination Hollow destroyed my base. It's just not happening. So clearly this is about events and maybe elimination mode. I don't know, but clearly this is about events, in my opinion. So that's kind of where we're at. Oh my gosh. So my Discord crew, y'all are hilarious, man. So DC says, but yeah, they said the game's gonna be around for 5, 10, 15 years. and and Blade 19 says, well, just because they said that means absolutely nothing. I can say that I'm gonna be around the next 15 years, and God forbid I get hit by a train. But nah, man, like, so yeah, I mean, I what I was told is like once they get in there with the new studio, once they get in there with Yodo, they should be good for about 4 to 5 years total in that collaboration minimum. So yeah, they got some time. But they gotta manage the community. I do agree with you guys that they definitely gotta manage the community in that regard. Okay, well, Trax says that there was an alliance that complained about Ruination Hollows destroying their base. A really, really well known alliance. All right, touche, bro. But yeah, I was like, so I said it's not a common thing. I don't think that it's a common thing that people up there in Prime League War and definitely not in Top War hard mode, where most people are in there saying, yeah, the holograms are too much. Now, some stuff that the holograms will do. Um, and I've been trying to preach that a little bit, but the holograms. Where is my the holograms will stop this guy right here because when you go and use three different beams and you got three different holograms in the area, guess what? They're gonna hit those holograms and then your team don't gotta eat up all that damage. So holograms good, but they made it better for that because the holograms are stronger. We just saw it a couple minutes ago in one of those battles. They made them stronger, but they don't want them to take down HQ. To me, that screams that screams that we don't want them dominating events. And like I said, events non-competitive. You already got to grind. You're already making money off of it. You know, I don't see the need to try to destroy how people maneuver their way through events. So Big Blade asks if there's any news on new G1s, SA11s. Nah, nah, it's not. I I saw somewhere that they did want to start working some of that stuff, but I don't know when. I mean, like most of the stuff when it comes to release dates, if we are not testing it and if I'm not showing it on the screen, about 80% of the time, that means I don't know nothing about it. Cause I was like, man, I'm gonna keep it a band with you. I like getting paid, and so you know what I get paid, is when y'all watch the stream because y'all excited about the content that's coming out. And so usually I don't, we don't have that information until we start testing a lot of stuff. Big Blade, oh excuse me, it's two of y'all. So I was talking to Big Blade. Now I'm talking to Blade, reading Blade 19's comment, and it says, "I am here because I actually love the game and just hoping and praying they do something better. Just fix this shit." So yeah. Yeah, nah, I mean, eh, man's got a point. Volcanic 69 says blame the crybabies. Man, look, it's tough because there's a lot of the problem that we're having is so layered, and I hope that we get to a steady medium. I will say this though, um, while we're going through this storm of all of these fixes and stuff like that, um, and it's tough. So please don't take what I'm about to say is me blaming you, but please try to be patient. Because, and I only say that because I'm not going to say we're going to look at this in a couple of weeks and laugh. We're not. But we're going to start finding new strategies, and people are going to start copying some of those strategies. And, they say they're going to give some buffs to some of the combiners that, got nerfed and stuff like that. I don't know what that's going to look like, and I don't want to, I'm not hanging my hat on that right now. And dude, ugh. I was just reading the comment. I'll come back to it, but yeah, I'm not gonna hang my hat on any of that right now. But yeah, we'll just try to be patient because we are gonna start figuring out a way. I know I started figuring mine's out like day one, day two, and then Nova Prime got back to being good. Nova and Vector Prime, and so then I switched that up this week. Um, and it's gonna come, but so yeah, it'll be stuff like that. All right, so Sound Blast 51 says how to get the shadow skins off of tracks and Cutthroat. Um, I did, and I just closed the store, the web store. I thought it was in there. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong because they do look cool. Both of them look cool. Um, but I didn't see it when I was scrolling. But I also didn't look very hard, so my apologies. Oh my god, y'all are hilarious, man! Like with the vitriol for DC says, "Who needs ability 11's G1 cores? We got skins coming though." And he says, cue up the Naked Gun exploding building and Leslie Nielsen waving, saying nothing to see here. Now, I mean, so my take on G1s and Ability 11s, and as much as people want them, I'm not overly concerned if we don't get those right away because those are actually, this is the way that I view G1s and Ability 11s. That's a stopgap for when we start to have power creep. And I saw a comment earlier about power creep. Uh, I think we do need to let it happen. I believe it was Blade 297 that said that, but I was like, I think you do got to let it happen to a certain extent, and then you give the bot a jolt with a G1, then you give the bot a jolt with an ability 11, so on and so forth. Um, Once you don't do that, like prime example, if you go use endurance as a measuring stick, with endurance, you're getting the ability 11 and G1 right out the gate. So that means that that's that bot ceiling at that point, and it's not going to bother you right away. It's going to bother you like 2-3 years down the road. But maybe that's part of the design. I'm not sure, but yeah, Trax said they had to fix Cup with this update. He was doing huge damage, and he's going to show me the replay later. Yeah, I heard about it. I hadn't actually seen a replay of it yet. I And the thing is, I probably should have used them a couple of times in some of my recent wars. I didn't, but I would have liked to have seen it because I did hear about it. Yeah, Berserk says the buffs are really good. The nerfs seem really hard to justify, though heavy-handed. Yeah, now I said that like 2 weeks ago. Some of them were heavy-handed for sure. Michael Cooper says I'm all for more bots to use in war. That's a good thing for the game. What I'm not for is having bots neutered, ability 11s completely stripped, that we're selling points for the upgrade. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that's real. And I see Black Knight Mon joined us. Thanks for joining, broski. Okay, well, the actual player track said he didn't see the bot track skin in the web store either. Okay, so all right, yeah, because like I said, I kind of skimmed at it, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I actually got kind of pissed off when I saw that they was selling this stuff for $150, and I closed it, and then I did the same thing when I got on stream. So, um, hmm, yeah, I'm not sure where that's gonna be at then. All right, Matt Martigan says 70-30 odds that the skins have bugs. uh, uh, uh. And I say, okay, I see people giving out the list of the 5-star batch. So I guess I can stop talking about all this BS and start talking about that, huh? So, um, so with the 5-star batch, you always going, and they've done this so many different ways. I imagine that they were trying to catch up at certain points. So, but you got 2 endurance bots, and it's going to be my homie Nova Prime and the Autobot counterpart, and that Vector Prime are coming in there as in the first set of endurance bots for this batch. So pretty cool that he just got a buff. Now when they first did the patch, he was all jacked up, but this is one that people ask me, should you use this? And you got to use them with caution. This is a new loadout that I'm trying out, so you can take that for what it's worth. I know everybody is really super hyper obsessed with setups, but this is something I'm trying out based off of team compatibility. Anyway, um, his ability with the holograms now not being targetable right away. What Dale's intent was he wanted to let these holograms get through some of their flips. And so if you guys who haven't never ever seen it, what he does is he'll go jump around, do some damage, and they'll do they'll do some flips, and it actually helps them cover a lot of area if you use good pathing. If you got shitty pathing, it's not going to do anything for you. So yeah, like in this case, one of the things he was trying to help with now actually I don't know if I got it on test, but um you open up that portal and then you do some flips. Now he's going to target whatever comes next, but it's three of these things, so it helps. Honestly, it helps with a lot of stuff. For me, I just want the outpost pop and not much of anything else. So I'm good with them. If you're somebody who wants the holograms to be as strong as like Blot or Rook, he's not your dude. And so then it becomes a thing of don't even bother if that's the case. I love him. I love the fact that I can get decent damage off of him as opposed to having to use another tank. And that's why I love him so much. And it's justified when I'm able to clear certain areas and then outpost pop from long distances. So, I mean, granted, if you using Blot or Rook or like Nightbird or RC, I mean, they can walk up a long way, but this is a little bit more efficient. I feel like from a team synergy standpoint. So, so they're the first one going in there. For those of you who didn't get them during endurance, we also are going to have Dreadwing is coming, and I was talking to some buddies earlier. Dreadwing and Wing Saber are coming, and I just added this dude to my team like maybe a month ago, and the goal they're saying is they just made minor changes to Vector Prime to make them better. You know, no Wing Saber and Dreadwing were doing too much damage at one point. They fixed that. So the intent right now is for them not to have to bother those two bots. We'll see how it goes because, like I was saying earlier, they have been looking at the war data over the past, since the patch. And, you know, just gonna be honest with you, Dreadwing and Wing Saber unit users are dominating by quite a bit in that data. So I saw it. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna, it's not something I'm gonna share yet because it's still inconclusive. But they are dominating based on the data that the Yodos are looking at. So I hope they don't have to make any changes to him. He's really good at what he does. I think as long as he keeps the glass gas, he'll be okay. But who knows? So Fox the Bomb just saw the DPS. Yeah, his DPS base DPS is pretty solid and puts him, um, ahead of um, puts him in the category of bots like Acid Storm and Slingshot, but like slightly ahead of them, which is cool because they came out a few years ago. So yeah, so that's what we're looking at. So far in the 5-star batch, we got Vector Prime and Nova Prime, and then we got Wing Saber and Dreadwing. So and this dude almost didn't make the batch because like low key they kind of forgot about him. But shoot, do I have him on modern? I don't have him on the test server right now. I think it got deleted on my test server. But let me see first. But yeah, D16 and Orion packs are going to be in the batch as well. So another one of your endurance event bots. Yeah, I didn't realize that. So I got to actually level him up. And, usually when we talking about a 5-star batch after they get worked out, go make individual videos for each one. So I'll still do that. But I mean, I was never really like overly like impressed by those, to be honest with you. But maybe they can get a little bit of attention. So we'll see what happens. I got a 4 star in here though. So yeah, I ain't done anything to him. But when you look at his ability, splitting into additional weapons, targeting defenses or enemy bots. Each weapon places a pulse on the target for 5 seconds. So yeah, they want to add some. They want to add some stuff to that. I ain't gonna get too deep into it right now. We're just kind of just doing the reveal. Um, and honestly, there is a developer. I don't want to say new. I don't know where they got him from, but he's not like on Discord yet. Um, but they're working this particular project, so um, hopefully they do a real nice job. I believe they'll do a nice job, but um, yeah, he almost didn't make the batch because they started doing some of them out of order, and somebody in playtest brought it up. They was like, "Hey, D16 was before this one. Is he not? Is he being skipped for a reason?" And they was like, "Oh no, we're supposed to do D16 and Orion pack." So, all right. So far we got Nova Prime and Vector Prime. We got Wing Saber and Dreadwing, and now we got Orion packs and D16. All right, yeah, and tracks. I seen your 2 messages or whatever. I ain't got to share that stuff today. I want to actually break it down first, but I'll take a look at it, and then then we'll see what I want to use for content. But nah, I appreciate it. All right, so now we actually got a 5 star. So this is where one of the ones we're going to put a lot of the work. So and Snapdragon, because both sides um, is coming to the 5 star batch. So this is one of the bots they want to put some focus on. And yeah, I know when Snapdragon first came out. Now, it's a lot of people just fans from like lore reasons and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people that actually, really like Snapdragon in game, but they, you know, want to look to give it probably a little something extra here. So if you got ideas, put them in the chat. If you don't get them right now, put them in the comments or hit me up on Discord or Line app, and we can try to kind of push. We can try to kind of push this stuff along. But yeah, so Snapdragon's coming, and then finally the last one. Now this one's the one that I think most testers are already saying is going to take the most work. But I'm going in our air class, and so Skywarp Night Raven is going to come to the 5 star batch along with the Autobot counterpart, Jetfire Sky Striker. So yeah, and like just looking at that tooltip right there, um, I think every playtester unanimously was just like, yeah, they need a lot of work, but you know, but then again, like I actually didn't realize people hated him that bad, to be honest with you. And they've already started talking about some of the changes. I'm not getting into all that yet. I'll get into that when we actually get to the point of testing. But 20 missiles. I think they just need to. I honestly think that if they did some balancing, to bring it up to the current meta. I mean, it wouldn't be bad. You can't shoot this motherfucker. You know, he'll be in stealth mode. So um, it kind of makes me wonder. It kind of makes me wonder if they're gonna give some kind of buff to anti-air. I know they wanted to do it in the past, And there were certain testers that talked them out of trying to do anti-air. They said, "Why are we working with anti-air and like nobody uses jets?" And I was like, "Oh, well, that mean you don't want to change anything about it." And so I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's your five. So, like I said, Vector Prime, Nova Prime, as well as Dreadwing, Wing Saber, D16 in the Ryan packs, Snapdragon, and then Skywarp Night Raven and Jetfire Sky Striker. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, say Michael Cooper says D16 looking like the potato so far. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if they're gonna do anything to try to make them better. Ooh, sheesh. Trax made a good point. He said, "So we're getting the Ryan packs almost a year later when the movie came out this time last year." Well, I mean, keep in mind that, well, we would have had typically we would have had 5-star batch, a little bit earlier in the year than this. We usually would have had a batch around June, which still the movie came out like around. I think the movie came out on like what, May last year, and then nah, I mean, it was just other bots. They had bots they had to put in the batch, earlier in the year. So, and they still come out in the order that they did a good job last year. They were putting it endurance around the time of the movie, so that was cool. But yeah, it's gonna take some time. Okay, around August, September for the movie. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Nah, I don't, yeah, now it was later than that. I said, I mean, not that it's overly important, but yeah, man. So, so that's what we got. I will say though, I was doing some I was doing some playing around with God, Neptune, and Ruin Nation earlier, and one of the things that I was looking at was like how I actually use them. And for me, and I've actually modified my war team a little bit on my actual live server. But one of the things I was looking at is, and a lot of people been complaining about him from wars, but I actually think he's still pretty solid in wars. So I'm gonna take a look at how I use him. I think I showed this before, but it's always worth showing again. So one of the things that I was looking at with him was, let me clear some stuff out here. One of the things I was looking at with him, and granted, this isn't like a war base. I probably could have just went in there and fought one of my teammates or something. But one of the things I like to do is pop some outpost and combiner outpost. And because a lot of these bases are like split level bases, those holograms, even if they can't now, it's like I said earlier, it is going to be chaos for actual events. There's going to be chaos for that. But one of the things I like to do is bring God Neptune to the top of the screen, and yeah, they were actually a little bit too easy, but I'll use this as an example. I'll bring him to the top of the screen, and as he gets close to like dying and everything, what I'll do is I'll kind of bait the outpost bots up to the top of the screen, and I'll try to keep them there as much as I can, depending on what's up there. Because right now they got some softer targets, But what I'll do is close to when he's dying, I'll go leave those holograms there so that after God, Neptune, and Ruination, after they die, everything will be focused on the top of the screen. So those outpost bots kind of get trapped. And because it's three of those things up there, those holograms, then they get kind of stuck. So from that aspect, I think he's still war viable. Um, most of the combiners are right around the similar level, but this all got nuances. So, um, so yeah, I think really that's it. Oh, the weapon. So I don't know what the other creators said while I was gone last week, but so they got a new weapon coming. It's called the Siren Beacon. I can't actually get it to work on my test account. I know a lot of people were testing it out last week. I would have showed it last week, but I didn't stream after I got the bad news. Um, but basically, what it's got going is it's a beacon. It's going to send a stream of psionic waves. These wave cause all foes to immediately run towards and attack the beacon. And it kind of reminds me, and back then people didn't really like it like that. There was a few people that kind of caught on and started using it, but it kind of reminded me of a combat bot that we had. And I actually don't get them up here, but I think it was a Giza that used to do that. It kind of reminded me like that because it kind of reminds me of that blind where it reduces the attack range or something like that. Now, one of the things that we are supposed to get is one of the things we are supposed to get is, um, well, not get, but like as a counter, if you go use one of your rush attacks like Megatron Rush or like Optimus Prime or like Scylla or Aerial, those rushes, will break the hold because the priority will go to it'll go towards your bots, your control bots. But the building health on this one's pretty huge. They got it at level 2, they got it at 12.6k. Clearly, they're saving you some space to at later on have more levels and then unlock power cores at those higher levels. So that's on the way. Like I said, hopefully I can get my. They were having some problems in playtesting. I know people were still testing it, but mine's is broke. So when I have more to show off, I'll talk about it. But I think that's going to be like a HQ19 thing. But I think it's gonna fit in the meta really well though, because like with a lot of these split bases, I think if you can pull them into like kill zones, or you can pull them in the bad pathing, then I think this weapon can be really great. So we'll see how it turns out. But all right, I think that I am going to call it a night. Um, thanks everybody for joining the stream this weekend. I'll be back, next week, and you know, we'll see if there's a whole bunch of changes that took place to the game next week. But anyway, I'll see you guys next time, and I'll see you on the battlefield. Freezius out.